So in the previous presentation, I concluded with an attempt at a seamless texture that kind of fell apart when I actually tried to make it tileable. And the reason was because I think I sampled too much of the image and there was too much of a gradation from light pebbles to dark pebbles. When I put those together, it made a very obvious seam. So even though that the texture itself was tileable, there was a really obvious pattern. So I'm just going to really quickly sample a smaller patch of this. I'll copy it, and in Photoshop I'll create a new document that's 512 pixels by 512 pixels, and I'll paste that new sample. Now I'll transform this down because I copied a little bit more information than just 512 pixels, and I'll try to make most of that fit on screen. There we go. I'll apply that transform, and I'll do the same thing that I did before. I'll just do a quick offset, and I'll set it to 256 square, and already you can see that it's not as obvious. Now there's still a really clear seam in here, but this is going to be a lot easier to make as a tileable texture. And so I'll just jump in, I'll grab the rubber stamp or the clone tool, and I'll just do a quick sample here and really just get in there and start to destroy any obvious seam. Okay, and I get a little blurring here, but that's okay. I'll do it real quick. So that looks pretty good. I destroyed that top seam pretty well. I'll do the bottom, and so with just a few passes of the rubber stamp tool, already I have something that I think that I can work with. So I'll just create some variation in here. So that's with the rubber stamp tool, and of course if I want to really implement the magic of Photoshop, I can go in here and just do this spot healing brush and just paint over this seam here, and just like that, it more or less destroyed the seam. Now it gets a little blurry when you use the spot heal brush, but just to what I could do is go in here and just do some real creative selections. And again, I would take a little bit more time doing this, but I can get in there and actually duplicate some of these rocks and stack them in places that would really help to break up the seams. I'll just kind of clean up a couple of these edges here so that some of these dark pixels don't show up. So now I got a nice clean rock that I can duplicate a couple of times, and maybe I can grab just a few random rocks that I want to use in different places. Just duplicate the layer that rock is on, and now I have a rock where I can just cover up some pretty problematic areas. So now if I use that white rock, that really starts to jump out as something that will be repeated, but you get the idea. We got some rocks that we can throw around. There we go. And what I can do now at this point is I'll just do a quick save as, and again I'll save this as a JPEG because it'll be pretty efficient. And I'll save this inside my project folder. I'm still working out a sandbox, which I'm going to change that here in a short bit. I'll save that in Assets, Textures, and I'll just save this as, I'll call this one Rocks 2. And I'll say OK. And I'll just do a quick test. I'll jump back into Unity, I'll take Rocks 2 and I'll throw that on an object. And by itself it, looks okay. It's doing the trick. And if I tile that a couple times across that object, it tiles pretty good. I can't really see a real obvious seam. Now again, I see some repeating in the pattern, but we're going to get that. And that looks a lot better than the last one because I took some care. I used the same image, I just didn't sample as much because I noticed that this image went from really light on one side to really dark on the other. So just by choosing a different sample of the image, I was really quickly able to create a texture that tiled much better. So I'll probably end up using this texture that I just created as part of my landscape texture and use that as a path to follow a little bit later. But we'll refine the level in the game in future presentations. In the next presentation, I want to talk a little bit about creating custom objects inside Cinema 4D that can work in a modular way, just like we did with these cubes, to build some other components that we can't quite get at in the game objects, create other menu inside Unity. So we'll create some custom objects and build some custom textures and wrap that to the UV coordinate system, and bring in some custom textures that we illustrate that will snap together with our existing strategies. And we'll do that in the next presentation.